Have you ever received a parking ticket and thought, this is ridiculous? Most of us just pay it, grumble, and move on. But what if that seemingly insignificant $2 ticket wasn't just an annoyance, but a ticking time bomb for an entire city's finances? That's precisely what happened in a fascinating legal saga that began with a routine parking violation in a major U.S. city. It wasn't about the amount, but about a fundamental flaw in the city's process that went unnoticed for years, affecting thousands of citizens. The initial fine was negligible, a mere $2, but the underlying legal principle it violated was anything but. This story isn't just about a parking ticket. It's about the extraordinary power of due process and how a small oversight can unravel into a massive legal catastrophe. You won't believe how much this seemingly minor error ultimately cost the taxpayers. The core issue wasn't the act of parking illegally itself, but how the city handled the subsequent late fees and penalties. Like many municipalities, this city imposed escalating fines for unpaid tickets. A $2 ticket might become $20 after a week, then $50 after a month. The problem? The initial notices sent to drivers failed to adequately inform them of their right to contest the ticket in court before these penalties began to accrue. This might sound like a minor technicality, but under U.S. law, citizens are entitled to clear notice of their rights and an opportunity to be heard, a principle known as due process. Without proper notification, any subsequent penalties could be deemed unlawful, essentially creating an illegal revenue stream for the city. This critical flaw was a ticking time bomb, accumulating thousands of violations daily, and it would take one determined individual to finally expose it. Enter the plaintiff, a regular citizen who, like many others, received a parking ticket. Instead of simply paying the $2 fine plus the now increased late fee, he looked closer at the citation. He noticed the missing language regarding his right to a hearing before the penalties kicked in. Most people would just shrug and pay to avoid further hassle. But this individual saw a systemic injustice. He realized that if his rights were violated, thousands of others likely had theirs violated too. This wasn't about the $2. It was about holding the city accountable to the very laws it was supposed to uphold. His decision to challenge the ticket, not just pay it, was the pebble that started an avalanche. But how do you take on an entire city bureaucracy over a tiny parking ticket? The answer lies in a powerful legal tool, the class action lawsuit. A class action lawsuit is a legal procedure where one or several individuals sue on behalf of a larger group of people who have suffered similar injuries or damages. In our parking ticket case, the injury was the unlawful collection of late fees due to a lack of due process. Instead of thousands of citizens individually suing the city over their $20 or $50 late fees, one plaintiff could represent all of them. This makes it economically viable to pursue claims that might be too small to litigate individually, but collectively represent a significant sum. The key is demonstrating that there are common questions of law and fact among all members of the class. For the city, this meant that instead of dealing with isolated complaints, they were now facing a unified front of potentially tens or even hundreds of thousands of aggrieved citizens. This shifted the stakes dramatically, from a minor administrative issue to a major legal threat. Initially, the city likely viewed this as an easily dismissible nuisance. Their legal department probably thought, it's just a parking ticket, what's the big deal? They argued that citizens should reasonably know their rights, or that the fines were a legitimate way to encourage prompt payment. They might have pointed to the sheer volume of tickets issued annually, suggesting that changing the system would be an undue burden. They might have even tried to settle with the individual plaintiff for a small amount to make the problem go away quietly. However, the plaintiff's lawyers understood the fundamental legal principle at stake: due process. They weren't just arguing about the amount of the fine, but about the city's systemic failure to follow established legal procedures. This wasn't a subjective debate. It was about a clear violation of constitutional rights, and that's a much harder argument for any government entity to win. What happened next would send shockwaves through City Hall. The courts ultimately sided with the plaintiff, finding that the city's parking ticket notices indeed violated the due process rights of its citizens. The lack of clear information about the right to contest the ticket before penalties accrued was a fatal flaw. This ruling wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It invalidated years of collected late fees and penalties. Imagine the implications. Every single person who had paid an increased parking fine without proper notice was now potentially entitled to a refund. This decision transformed a $2 parking ticket into a multi-million-dollar liability. The judge's ruling was a clear affirmation that even for minor infractions, governmental bodies must adhere strictly to constitutional principles. This set a powerful precedent, not just for this city, but potentially for others across the nation that might have similar flawed systems. But how many people were truly affected, and how would the city even begin to calculate the damages? The scale of the problem quickly became apparent. The city had been issuing hundreds of thousands of parking tickets annually for years, and a significant portion of those had accumulated late fees paid by citizens who weren't properly informed of their rights. Lawyers for the class had to sift through mountains of data, parking records, payment histories, and notice templates to identify every single person who had paid an unlawful late fee. The total amount of illegally collected funds quickly soared into the millions. For example, if 200,000 people paid an average of an extra $30 in unlawful late fees over 5 years, that's already $6 million. This calculation didn't even include potential interest on those funds or, more significantly, the legal fees for the class action attorneys. This wasn't just pocket change. It was a substantial portion of the city's annual budget. The city was now facing a financial crisis directly stemming from a seemingly minor administrative oversight. Facing an enormous legal judgment and the potential for even higher costs if the case went to a full trial, the city opted for a settlement. Class action settlements are often a compromise, allowing both sides to avoid the uncertainty and expense of prolonged litigation. In this case, the city agreed to pay out a multi-million-dollar sum to compensate the class members. This included the principal amount of the unlawfully collected late fees, plus interest, and a substantial sum to cover the attorney's fees for the plaintiff's legal team, which could be a significant percentage of the total settlement. The settlement also typically included a requirement for the city to reform its parking ticket notification process to ensure future compliance with due process. This wasn't just a payout. It was a forced systemic change, ensuring that the same mistake wouldn't be repeated. But the financial impact went far beyond just the direct payout. The true cost to the city extended far beyond the multi-million-dollar settlement itself. First, there were the city's own legal defense costs, which could easily run into hundreds of thousands of dollars or more, paying their lawyers to fight the case for years. Then there was the administrative burden of implementing the settlement, identifying class members, processing claims, and issuing refunds. This required significant staff time and resources. More subtly, there was the damage to public trust. Citizens saw their city government as having illegally taken their money, leading to cynicism and resentment. This can make it harder for the city to pass referendums, garner public support for initiatives, or even collect taxes efficiently. The saga also forced the city to overhaul its entire parking enforcement system, incurring further costs for new forms, software, and training. All of this stemmed from one small, correctable flaw. And this wasn't the first time a city made this kind of mistake. This city wasn't an isolated incident. Across the U.S., numerous municipalities have faced similar class action lawsuits over improper parking ticket procedures. For example, some cities have been sued for issuing tickets on private property without proper authority or for towing cars without adequate notice. In another instance, a city was successfully sued for adding administrative fees to parking tickets that were not explicitly authorized by state law. Each of these cases highlights a common thread. City governments, in their pursuit of revenue or efficiency, sometimes overlook the fundamental legal rights of their citizens. These mistakes often stem from a lack of legal review of administrative processes or simply assuming that it's always been done this way. The lesson is clear. Even seemingly minor regulations must be rigorously vetted against constitutional principles, or the financial and reputational consequences can be severe. It's a reminder that no government entity is above the law. The core legal lesson from this case is the enduring power of due process. The 5th and 14th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution guarantee that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Property here includes even a few dollars in parking fines. Due process requires fair procedures, which includes adequate notice and an opportunity to be heard before the government can take action against you, especially when that action involves financial penalties. This case serves as a powerful reminder that even the smallest government action must comply with these fundamental constitutional protections. For citizens, it shows the importance of scrutinizing official notices and understanding your rights. For government entities, it's a stark warning. Procedural shortcuts, no matter how small, can lead to monumental legal and financial liabilities. The law is not just about the outcome, but about the fairness of the process itself. So, what can you do if you think your rights have been violated? If you receive a parking ticket or any other official notice you believe is unfair or legally flawed, don't just pay it automatically if you suspect a deeper issue. First, carefully read the entire notice, looking for specific language about your right to a hearing or appeal. Second, research your local municipal code online. Most cities publish their ordinances, including parking regulations. Third, consider consulting with an attorney, especially if you believe there's a systemic problem affecting many people. Small legal aid clinics or community legal services might offer initial advice. While most tickets are legitimate, this case proves that sometimes a small fee can hide a big legal error. Your vigilance, or the vigilance of one person, can make a difference. This particular case had a profound impact on how cities across the country review their administrative processes. It transformed a minor infraction into a landmark case, all because of a $2 parking ticket. The story of the $2 parking ticket that cost a city millions is a powerful reminder that in the U.S. legal system, even the smallest individual right can have immense consequences when violated on a systemic scale. It underscores the critical importance of due process and how government entities must operate within the strict confines of the law. This case exemplifies how one person's refusal to accept an injustice can lead to significant legal and financial accountability for a large institution. It's a testament to the fact that justice isn't always about the dollar amount, but about upholding fundamental principles. If you found this legal journey insightful, please consider subscribing for more true U.S. legal cases and courtroom stories told simply.